Blazers backcourt was phenomenal last night, and I've come around to a different way of thinking about them, and that's what we're going to cover in today's video. Now, last night, the Portland Trail Blazers took on the Los Angeles Clippers. They were shorthanded as they were without Jerami Grant and DeAndre Ayton, but they made the game close and competitive, losing 132 to 127. The defense wasn't there, but offensively, this team looked phenomenal, with Anfernee Simons back to go along with Scoot Henderson, who's improving, and Shaedon Sharpe, who's on an all-star caliber stretch right now. This Blazer backcourt looks freaking good. In NBA history, I can't think of another situation where you subtract arguably the greatest player in that franchise's history from a position group, and then the position group is still this good and this young. Having Scoot, Simons, and Sharpe, the triple S's, going forward is absolutely a luxury. Now, there's very important things to touch on for each and every player. But before we jump into things, this video is brought to you by BetUS. BetUS is our awesome sportsbook sponsor all season long. They are reliable, secure, have great customer service, and are there for you 24/7. They're a great way to get some extra entertainment on the NFL. The playoffs are coming up here in about a month. They got parlays, prop bets, live betting, and you can pick spreads as well. The Blazers going into yesterday were a 13-point underdog, and I took the Blazers plus the points, and the over-under line was also 220. I smashed the over. Both those picks were 100% correct, as the two teams in this game combined for 259 points, and the Blazers only lost by 5. I think the Blazers have been underrated, and they've done a good job against the spread. They've been in a lot of close games, so you can get in on those spread lines with the Portland Trail Blazers, who I think are one of the most predictable teams in the league this year. You can also bet on who you think will win the championship, seasonal awards such as Most Valuable Player and Sixth Man of the Year, and if you use my link at the top of the description box, you'll receive a 125% deposit match. That's $125 for any $100 deposit, so you can have some fun with sports with BetUS. Shout out to them for being a great sponsor all season long. Now let's start talking about Anfernee Simons. Simons looked like a freaking star last night, man. One of the things we've talked about in the past, if Anfernee Simons is going to take that leap to stardom, is he needs to get to the free throw line more. He only shot 2.9 free throws a game last year, and last night this dude had 13 free throw attempts and made all of them. He was 10 for 23 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3. His shooting was hot. Inside the arc, he didn't finish too well if you just look at field goals, but a lot of times when he was going inside the arc, he was ending up at the free throw line and getting an automatic 2 points. So overall, very efficient night. 38 points on 23 shots is great. And the other thing regarding him looking more like a star was you could just see the Clippers overreacting to a ton of his drives all game long. He opened up a lot of good shots, and a lot of times they were missed, or maybe there was multiple passes made after he kicked it out, so he wasn't getting a ton of assists. 4 assists on the game is fine, but I don't think it does him justice regarding how much offense he helped the Blazers create last night and how much he made the game easier on the rest of his teammates. Without him, the Blazers probably struggled to score 110 last night. Without him, the Blazers lose by 20 or more points. Anfernee Simons made this game competitive and they almost won. Now, late, he did have a couple of mistakes, a couple of plays where you could say he forced it, but then again, Chauncey Billups, late in that game, seemed to just want Anfernee Simons to go make something happen. The offense didn't really have much structure, and it basically seemed like Chauncey was cool with just letting Anfernee run things. I would like to see Ant freed up off the ball when he's having a hot shooting night, because I think that would make life a little bit easier on him, and you also got some other talented players to play off of, especially once Jerami Grant and DeAndre Ayton comes back. And you should be able to use Shaedon Sharpe and Anfernee Simons off each other, maybe setting screens for each other, and try and use the attention that both of them will ultimately get to open up things for the rest of the offense. Now, I think Anfernee, just being that lethal scoring threat that he is making things easier on Shaedon Sharpe, because a lot of times I think defenses have to put their best defensive player on Anfernee Simons, and Ant draws a lot of attention. And Shaedon Sharpe has had a lot of open shots as of late, and the game just seems to be becoming easier for him. Now, some of this I think is him improving. He started this hot 5-game stretch before Anfernee Simons came back. Simons has only played in 3 of those games. But in Shaedon Sharpe's last 5 games, he's averaging 26.2 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 threes. His efficiency has been elite during this stretch. He's creating for others. He's only had 5 turnovers. He has a 4-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio during this stretch. And this has been all-star level Shaedon Sharpe. I didn't think we'd see it at 20 years old. what he's become and how much he's improved and the level that he's reached at 20 years of age is actually quite fascinating. And there's a lot of hype around him going into the league, so at this point it might seem, oh, he's doing what we expected him to. But realistically, coming into the league as a guy who did not play in college, he wasn't supposed to be looking this good this fast. His playmaking's improved a ton, his ball handling's improved, he's learning how to pick his spots, and his pace has improved as well. Earlier in the season, Sharpe seemed to get stuck trying to force the issue on drives, trying to get all the way to the rim when it wasn't there. I think he's doing a better job picking his spots when to pull up from the mid-range, when to go all the way and finish, and also the paint isn't as clogged. Having Anfernee Simons out there on the court as a lethal shooting threat that'll draw the attention of defenses, I think has helped Shaedon Sharpe be able to fully attack the rim. The thing with Shaedon was he was struggling with a thumb issue that could have been hindering his shot. I think that's hopefully healthier by now, and if you look at the shooting numbers, it suggests that his thumb is better because he's been on fire from three the last 5 games. Now, he has to figure out ways to still be an all-star caliber player when his three-point shot isn't falling. That's kind of the next step, because when the three ball's going in, it makes everything else easier. The best players, though, when their shot's not falling, they can make impacts in other ways. But that's why it's nice to see him have games of 10 and 9 rebounds during this 5-game stretch, to see him passing the ball the way he is, to see him attacking the way he is. Long-term, he should not be a player that is reliant upon his three ball to have an all-star caliber impact. But when it is falling, he's absolutely lethal. I also love how much Sharpe's been getting to the free throw line. He had 9 free throw attempts last night, 6 the game before. He's averaging 4.5 free throw attempts per game. And honestly, I don't think Sharpe has gotten a friendly whistle so far this year. I think once he gets into his prime, he's going to be averaging around 7 to 8 free throw attempts a game because of how freaking athletic he is when he drives. He's also starting to figure out some of the crafty veteran ways of drawing fouls, but there's still a long ways for him to go in terms of figuring out ways to get to the free throw line, and he's just scratching the surface in that regard. And finally, Scoot Henderson had the best game of his young career last night, as he had 19 points, 6 assists, with only 3 turnovers. He was 8 for 16 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3. As I said with Sharpe, it always looks better when your 3 ball's going in. Scoot looked confident from 3. He even hit a step through 3 at the shot clock buzzer. His shot was just dialed in. But it seems like he's streaky from game to game. In the 8 games since he's returned, he's had 4 games where he hasn't hit a 3, and he's had 4 games where he's hit multiple 3s. He doesn't have a single game where he's only made 1 3. So hopefully long term he can find a little bit more consistency and has a higher floor, so he's not having games where he's 0 for 6, 0 for 7 from 3. But every time he has a game shooting the ball like this, it is encouraging for his long-term shot. Now what really impressed me with Scoot though was his dribble drive game, because as I said a couple of post-game shows ago, I thought that Scoot was playing too sped up, too rushed. I think that contributed to a lot of his rough turnovers, him not being able to read the floor fast enough because he was going too fast. And a lot of great point guards in the NBA know how to play with pace. Just watch Malcolm Brogdon even, and the way he controls his pace and is able to get things done at a slower speed than Scoot Henderson plays at. I think what will help Scoot become an NBA level point guard will be learning how to play with pace, learning how to slow down, play a more deliberate style, speed up when he needs to, use his quickness when he needs to, but he doesn't always need to. Problem's been, he always tries to. For the most part, everything's been at a standstill or at a breakneck speed for Scoot. And Scoot acknowledged this in a pregame quote before last night's game, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially he said he's known since middle school that he's had elite speed. Now it's just learning when to use it, learning when to play with better pace. And last night I thought Scoot did the best job of that and had some impressive moments. He had a pull-up mid-range where he got into the paint but took his time. He had a floater off the screen where he didn't just drive full speed into a clogged paint. I think as Scoot learns to play with pace and then use his quickness in short bursts when he needs to, that's when you're going to start to see the prospect that people expected from him going into the league. In the G League, he could play at that breakneck speed. It's a lower level of basketball. In the NBA, as a 6'2", 6'3" guard, you can't get away with going 0% or 100%. You got to be able to change speeds within that. You got to be able to play at 40%, 60%, 80%. A lot of the shiftier guards in the league are shifty because they change pace within that range. And watching it, it felt like it was the first game where he felt like he had some level of control over the game as a ball handler and as a point guard. And it felt like he had a different level of confidence. So this backcourt looked phenomenal last night. And long term, the Blazers don't have to rush to trade any one of them. A lot of people have wanted to trade Anfernee Simons at this year's trade deadline to go all in on a backcourt with Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe. But there's no rush because I think in the end, regardless if the Blazers keep all three guards or only two of the three, they're going to need to figure out their front court and find a front court that complements the backcourt enough to win a championship or contend. I don't think Jeremy Grant or DeAndre Ayton are the long-term answers at the power forward and center position. I think the Blazers need to aim higher. They have some assets that they got from the Damian Lillard trade, and they are 6-16 this year, so they could end up with the #1 pick and maybe take a chance on an Alex Sarr of all people. Cooper Flagg is in next year's draft. The Blazers need to aim higher than Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton. I think maybe one of them could be the starter if you get an all-star caliber player at the other position, but regardless, the Blazers are going to have to build out their front court in the right way. Having three dynamic young guards gives the Blazers a better chance that two of them will pop. 2 of 3 is more likely than 2 of 2, and with how good Anfernee Simons and Shaedon Sharpe have looked together, the Blazers have a chance to have a little bit more of an accelerated rebuild. I think Scoot's fine playing 30 to 32 minutes as the third guard, as the sixth man, and if all three of those players start playing like all-stars, it's a good problem to have. Maybe it's something where the Blazers can keep all three and play them together a little bit and give them all 35 minutes a game with Scoot being a dynamic sixth man. Maybe they start Shaedon Sharpe at the 3 and then slide him down to the 2 when Anfernee Simons slides down to the 1. There's many different iterations where I think the Blazers can make this backcourt work, because I don't think it will ultimately come down to if the Blazers pick 2 or have all 3 of them. I think it comes down to getting the right front court. No, I do think the Blazers need 2 of these 3 guards to become all-star level contributors. That makes the rebuild process a lot easier, and you already got 2 guys that are getting pretty close in my opinion. But the nice thing about this is, with Shaedon Sharpe being 20 years old and Scoot Henderson being 19, the Blazers have an 8-year window to get that proper starting front court. Because in 8 years, Sharpe's going to be 28, Scoot's going to be 27. They're going to be right smack in their prime. This is the opposite of the Damian Lillard situation, where it felt like we were running out of time for the last 3 years with him, and ultimately, Dame time was up. If the Blazers can do things right the next 2 or 3 years, and Anfernee Simons fully develops into that star caliber player he's been looking like this season, then the Blazers have a chance to do something special 3 years from now. Scoot will only be 22 at that point. That's what I love about this backcourt. There's 3 guys that could all hit, and it gives the Blazers an extended window with some assets coming down the line in 2028, 2029, etc. So I don't think there's any rush moving off of one of these guards. I think the Blazers can just let them develop, give them all heavy minutes, maybe have them all start together at some point in the next couple of years to see what that looks like, and they can take their time putting the right front court around them. So anyway, let me know what you think of the backcourt, both right now and then also in the long term. It's fun having 3 guards like this to talk about, and it's going to make for some fascinating content over the next 2 to 3 years, and I love that. Once again, shout out to BetUS, link in the description box below for a 125% deposit match, and we are out of here. I'll catch you next time. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.